Welcome to the deep dive. Our mission today is, well, it's straightforward, but the subject is just monumental.
Absolutely.
We're taking a deep dive into the life and really the unparalleled genius of Aretha Louise Franklin.
And this isn't just about, a greatest hits playlist.
No, not at all. This is about understanding the very foundation of American soul music.
It really is. I mean, when we talk about Aretha Franklin, you have to remember this is an artist who was twice named by Rolling Stone magazine as the greatest singer of all time.
Twice.
That's the bedrock. It's the synthesis of spiritual devotion, of pain, of freedom, and just the sheer vocal power all in one unique sound.
We've gone through a whole stack of sources for this.
Yeah.
Biographies, music analyses, historical documents, to give you the definitive shortcut to understanding her legacy.
And the scale of it is it's mind-boggling.
It is. Over 75 million records sold worldwide.
And that commercial success was matched by a kind of chart dominance that, honestly, very few artists in history can even touch.
Numbers are staggering.
They are. She charted 112 singles on the U.S. Billboard charts.
112.
And 73 of those cracked the Hot 100. But the key number, for me, is the 20 #1 R&B singles.
20. That's just a sustained run of excellence, decade after decade.
Exactly, across 5 decades.
Of course, everyone knows her for that definitive anthem, Respect. But when you do a deep dive into her catalog, it just reveals endless brilliance.
Oh, you make me feel like a natural woman, Chain of Fools.
The gospel masterpiece, Amazing Grace.
And then, much later, that global success with George Michael, I knew you were waiting for me.
Right. So our goal today is to really unpack that journey. The struggles, which were immense, the strategic failures, and of course the ultimate triumphs that earned her that permanent title, the Queen of Soul.
Couldn't have said it better.
Okay, so let's get into the origins. To really grasp the force of nature that was Aretha Franklin, you have to understand where that voice came from.
Right.
It wasn't just forged in a church. It was forged in this very specific kind of celebrity activist and emotionally charged household.
That's the key. She was born in Memphis in 1942, but her definitive years were really spent in Detroit.
And the Detroit home. It wasn't just a home, was it?
No, not at all. It was a cultural hub. Her father, Clarence LaVon Franklin, C.L. Franklin, was the pastor of the new Bethel Baptist Church. But he was so much more than a local minister.
A national celebrity.
A national celebrity, yeah. Famous for these dramatic, intense narrative sermons. They called him the man with the $1 million voice.
And when you say famous, you mean like celebrity famous?
Oh, yeah.
The sources say he was commanding thousands of dollars for his sermon appearances all across the country.
Which is a level of income and status that it instantly placed young Aretha in this completely unique environment. It was far beyond your typical church setting.
So the Franklin home becomes this nexus point where American gospel, activism, and early R&B all converged.
Exactly. Think about the guests who were regulars in that house. You had the giants of gospel, like Mahalia Jackson, James Cleveland, and the iconic Claire Ward.
And Claire Ward, she was more than just a house guest, right?
A lot more. The sources confirm she was romantically involved with C.L. Franklin. She served as this really crucial and kind of complex role model for Aretha during her formative years.
Imagine that influence. Seeing one of the greatest gospel singers of all time up close, living in your home.
It's massive. But the influences weren't only musical. The home was also a meeting place for civil rights leaders. Martin Luther King Jr. was a family friend, a constant presence.
Wow.
And then you had this blend of the sacred and the secular. Early R&B stars, pop stars like Sam Cooke and Jackie Wilson were also frequent visitors.
So that foundation gave her the entire language, intellectual, spiritual, and musical that she would draw on for the next 50 years.
Absolutely.
But beneath this vibrant, celebrity-filled exterior, there was also profound family trauma and instability.
That's the critical undercurrent. Her parents, C.L. and Barbara, they separated in 1948. And it was largely due to C.L.'s acknowledged infidelities.
And her mother, Barbara, who was an accomplished pianist and vocalist herself.
Right, in her own right. She moved back to Buffalo, but she maintained frequent contact, came to visit a lot.
And then the tragedy struck when Aretha was just 9 years old.
Precisely. Barbara died suddenly in a heart attack in 1952, right before Aretha's 10th birthday. And that loss is described as this immediate and devastating channel for her artistic expression.
You can see it in the record. The sources note that almost immediately after her mother's death, She started singing solos at New Bethel,
And her debut was the hymn, Jesus Be a Fence Around Me.
which is such an incredibly telling choice, isn't it? Searching for protection right after experiencing that huge unprotected loss.
Exactly.
And it was here that her self-taught genius really started to blossom. She learned to play the piano entirely by ear.
And that's not just a biographical footnote. Her ability to accompany herself on the piano and often, essentially arrange the song at the same time, that would become a defining characteristic. It set her apart from almost every other vocalist.
It gave her an unrivaled musical independence.
It did. Her piano playing wasn't just accompaniment, it was the rhythmic and harmonic engine for her vocal performance. It let her spontaneously shift the timing, the mood, the arrangement of a song in a way that, well, that you just can't do if you're only working with a band.
Her talent was so undeniable that her professional career started before she was even a teenager.
Right. Her father, CL, who had the contacts and the business sense, started managing her when she was just 12.
12 years old.
Taking her on gospel caravan tours all over the U.S.
And she was quickly recognized as this prodigious talent.
Oh, immediately. By age 14, she had recorded her first album, Songs of Faith, released on JVB Records. She was featured on vocals and piano, and her first singles, like Never Grow Old, were released in 1956.
It's just astonishing when you think about the juxtaposition of her life at that age.
It really is.
On one hand, she's this precocious talent touring the gospel circuit, so respected that Dinah Washington, the reigning queen of the jukeboxes, pointed her out to Quincy Jones and said,
Aretha was the next one.
"The next one."
But on the other hand, the deep personal challenges that ran parallel to this were just immense. And we have to slow down and acknowledge the profound burden and maturity that was required of her.
She gave birth to her first child, Clarence, at age 12.
At 12.
Yeah.
And her second son, Edward, at 15. I mean, she was still a child herself, navigating these massive physical and emotional responsibilities while performing professionally.
And it's important to note, both children took her family name. The sources show that while she was pursuing her career, her grandmother Rachel and her sister Irma were absolutely essential in helping to raise them.
So that combination of immediate, immense adult responsibility, profound spiritual training, and proximity to political and musical power, that's the crucible that created the Queen of Soul.
An adult performer burdened by a child's life.
Which surely fed the intensity and the rawness of her voice.
And just to tie back to that activist thread for a second, at 16, she was touring with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Right. And this wasn't just a friendly association. She was performing at civil rights events, deeply embedded in the struggle long before her songs became anthems for it. And that association was so fundamental that it would bring her full circle to sing at his funeral in 1968.
Truly a voice for the movement from the very beginning.
From the very beginning.
A deeply personal foundation of brilliance and burden set against the backdrop of American social change. That's where we start.
So by 1960, Aretha is 18, and she makes the strategic decision that's going to define the next 6 years of her life.
She wants to transition to pop music.
Right. She wants to leave the gospel circuit, largely inspired by the path that Sam Cooke had successfully paved.
So she heads to New York, and C.L. Franklin uses his network to get a 2-song demo tape made.
And that demo ultimately lands her a contract with Columbia Records. But the story of who didn't sign her is almost as fascinating as who did.
It's a huge what-if moment in music history, isn't it?
A massive one. Sam Cooke, who'd seen her power firsthand, desperately tried to persuade C.L. Franklin to sign her with RCA Victor. He believed that label could better handle her transition.
But the truly staggering historical footnote is Berry Gordy.
Yes, Gordy was just launching his brand new label, Tamla, which would soon become Motown.
And he wanted to sign Aretha and her sister Irma.
He did, and C.L. Franklin rejected the offer outright. He felt Tamla was too new, not established enough to handle his daughter's career.
Just imagine the history books if the Queen of Soul had been a Motown artist.
It's hard to even comprehend, but she ultimately chose Columbia in 1960. Her first single, Today I Sing the Blues, was issued almost immediately and became an R&B top 10 hit.
Her first album, Aretha, with the Ray Bryant combo from '61, was successful enough to give her first song on the Billboard Hot 100, Won't Be Long.
And she also showed off her versatility with a hit cover of the standard Rockabye Your Baby with a Dixie melody.
And that versatility was really key to Columbia's strategy.
It was. Under the producer Clyde Otis, Columbia deliberately avoided pigeonholing her. They wanted her to be this sophisticated, polished, all-encompassing pop star.
So they had her performing in all these diverse genres.
Everything.
What?
Standards, vocal jazz, blues, R&B. And it earned her early critical acclaim Downbeat magazine, named her a new star female vocalist by the end of 1961.
And it was during this era, the early 60s, at a performance at the Regal Theater in Chicago, that she gets the title that stuck.
Yeah, a WVON radio personality named Purvis Spann officially crowned her the Queen of Soul.
And the title was just this immediate recognition of her power, even if her label didn't quite know how to package it.
And that's the paradox of the Columbia years. She was critically acclaimed. She was earning major recognition.
By the mid-60s, she was making $100,000 a year from performances, which was a substantial income at the time.
A huge income. Yet she struggled with that widespread, consistent commercial success that really matched her talent.
Okay, this is the crucial disconnect we need to explore. 6 years, good money, critical praise, but no consistent chart dominance. Why did Columbia fail the Queen of Soul?
Well, it really comes down to creative misdirection. Columbia was trying to mold her into a successor to artists like Dinah Washington or maybe even a more R&B-inflected Barbra Streisand.
A versatile, polite pop singer.
Exactly. They were afraid that leaning too heavily into the raw, unadulterated power of her gospel roots would limit her crossover appeal to the mainstream, which meant, a largely white pop audience.
So it sounds like they were actively trying to strip away the very essence of what made her so unique.
That's precisely right.
That spiritual ferocity.
The label executive, John H. Hammond, later admitted this was their failure. He recognized that Columbia just had not understood the gravity or the commercial potential of her deep gospel background.
They wanted to smooth out the edges.
To sanitize the glorious, unpredictable runs and shouts that came so naturally to her.
The analogy we always hear fits perfectly here. They were trying to fit a volcano into a cocktail glass.
That's a great way to put it. They contained the heat and the power until it was palatable for the easy listening charts, where she did occasionally chart.
Right, alongside her continued Army success, with songs like Running Out of Fools and One Step Ahead.
But that containment, it ultimately stifled her. The album sales just didn't explode the way they should have. The market, even the pop market, could sense the inauthenticity or the repression in the music.
So after 6 years, the story concludes not with a huge bidding war, but with a quiet, kind of embarrassing whimper.
Yes. When her contract expired in November 1966, the financial reality was brutal. Despite her substantial performance income, the label's costs and low album sales meant she actually owed the company money.
She owed them money.
Because the guaranteed advances hadn't been recouped by sales, so that financial and creative obligation marked the end of her time at Columbia. A 6-year period of artistic frustration that, ironically, prepared her for what was coming next.
She was educated in the pop world, learned how the machine operated,
and was ready to break free and unleash her true power.
That commercial failure at Columbia, owing the label money, it just set the stage for one of the greatest career turnarounds in music history.
It really did.
Aretha needed a new home and a new vision, and she found both with Jerry Wexler at Atlantic Records.
And Wexler was the strategic genius who understood the fundamental mistake Columbia had made. He saw that her gospel background wasn't a liability to be contained.
It was the nuclear core.
It was the nuclear core that needed to be unleashed. His philosophy was deceptively simple, tapped directly into her spiritual roots to encourage this tenacious form of rhythm and blues that became increasingly identified as soul.
He wasn't looking for a polished pop star.
No, he was looking for the Queen of Soul.
And this new direction meant moving away from the New York polish and taking her south, right to the source of Southern soul.
Muscle Shoals, Alabama, in January of 1967, they set up shop at Fame Studios for the recording session of what would become her debut Atlantic single.
And the Muscle Shoals session is instantly legendary, but not for its smooth operation.
No, it was chaotic. The recording session for I Never Loved a Man the Way I Love You was abandoned after only one day because of an altercation.
Right. The sources are clear, the tension was high, and it was messy. It involved her manager and husband at the time, Ted White.
Getting into a fight with studio owner Rick Hall and a horn player. The session just dissolved immediately, and Franklin and White flew back to New York.
But despite the drama, or maybe because of the raw energy the drama injected,
that single aborted day produced an absolute masterpiece. The song was released the very next month, and the impact was immediate and phenomenal.
it was explosive. I Never Loved a Man The Way I Love You, soared to #1 on the R&B chart, and critically gave her first pop top 10 hit. It peaked at #9 on the Hot 100.
Her debut Atlantic album of the same name went gold.
This was the success Columbia had chased for 6 years, and she achieved it in one day of chaos in Alabama.
The world was ready for that raw, gospel-infused power, and Atlantic was ready to deliver it. But that breakthrough, as massive as it was quickly eclipsed by the signature track that became an immortal cultural touchstone.
Respect.
Respect.
Originally, of course, an Otis Redding song from 1965. But Franklin's version, released in April '67, it wasn't a cover. It was a total transformation.
And this is where we have to pause and talk about her vocal and rhythmic genius. Redding's version was a plea from a man who works all day, demanding respect when he comes home.
Aretha's version, which she essentially rearranged herself on piano, transformed it into a supercharged manifesto.
She flipped the gender dynamics, she added the famous "Sock It to Me" backup vocal refrain, and crucially, she added that iconic, emphatic spelling out of the title.
R-E-S-P-E-C-T. And the spelling wasn't just catchy. It added this degree of defiant clarity. It was an unmistakable declaration, not a subtle request.
And the social context was ready for that declaration. The song just exploded. It hit #1 on both R&B and pop charts, but its impact went so far beyond music.
It was instantly hailed as both a civil rights rallying, cry demanding dignity and recognition.
And a powerful feminist anthem demanding parody and acknowledgement in a way few songs ever have.
Otis Redding's reaction to this is one of the great anecdotes in music history.
It is. He reportedly loved her version, but admitted, "That little girl done took my song away from me." He knew she had found something in the song that he, the originator, hadn't even recognized.
And that launched what the sources rightly call her golden era. From '67 to '72, she was just unstoppable.
Yeah, by 1968, she was crowned the most successful singer in the nation, issuing masterpiece albums like Lady Soul and Aretha Now.
And these albums gave us hit after hit. Chain of Fools, Think, which she also co-wrote.
And the phenomenal Carol Gary Goffin composition, I Say a Little Prayer. The output was just relentless and consistently masterful.
The recognition was immediate and staggering. She established this legendary dominance at the Grammys,
winning the first 8 consecutive awards given for Best Female R&B Vocal Performance, from 1968 all the way through 1975.
8 in a row.
That is a level of initial, unchallenged mastery that is almost unbelievable.
The activist community recognized her power, too. In February '68, Martin Luther King Jr., just weeks before he was assassinated, personally presented her with the SCLC Drumbeat Award for Musicians.
The recognition of her cultural importance was total. It spanned from the pop charts right to the civil rights front lines.
And she became a global phenomenon. Late spring of '68, she undertakes her first tour outside the U.S. Amsterdam. The audience was described as near hysterical.
Literally covering the stage of flower petals. By June of '68, she's on the cover of Time magazine. She had arrived, and the world understood this was not a fleeting moment, this was a defining voice.
The creative peak of this Atlantic era, though, it wasn't a pop song. It was a return to her foundational spiritual roots.
That would be the 1972 recording of the live gospel album Amazing Grace. Recorded over 2 nights in a church, and it wasn't just critically acclaimed, it was a commercial juggernaut.
It sold over 2 million copies.
Making it one of the best-selling gospel albums of all time. It showed that her core audience and the mainstream audience had finally united around her spiritual power.
What's fascinating is the story surrounding the accompanying concert film, directed by Sidney Pollack. That footage sat dormant for decades.
It did. Initially, the delay was technical synching problems made the footage unusable, but later Franklin herself actually tried to prevent its distribution.
So the film, which documents this profound, career-defining moment, wasn't actually released until 2018.
Long after her death. It's a testament to the complex, private nature of her control over her image and her art.
But after 1972, the sources indicate that the momentum, particularly on the pop charts, began to waver.
It's the challenge every artist faces after a creative explosion. She tried new collaborations. Her 1973 album, Hey Now Hey, produced by the great Quincy Jones.
It bombed.
Yeah, it bombed. It failed to capture that signature Atlantic lightning in a bottle. And while she continued to score R&B hits like Until You Come Back to Me, By 1975, her albums were no longer guaranteed top sellers.
The disco era was taking hold, and her signature soul sound, at least the way it was being produced at Atlantic, was struggling to find traction.
Exactly. Though she did have one final major success collaborating with Curtis Mayfield on the soundtrack to the film Sparkle.
Right, that yielded Something He Can Feel, which gave her her last top 40 pop hit of the decade.
It was a beautiful, nuanced piece of work, but it was a temporary reprieve.
Her final albums for Atlantic, Almighty Fire and La Diva, they were chart failures. It just underscored that the magical partnership with Wexler and the Muscle Shoals sound had run its course.
And that led to her departure in 1979, a massive period of artistic growth, political significance, and soul dominance that ended, once again, on a commercial downswing.
She had revolutionized soul music, but now the industry was looking ahead, and Aretha needed to find a new way to stay relevant.
The end of the Atlantic era meant Aretha needed a major intervention to navigate the changing musical landscape of the 1980s.
And she found that intervention and that strategic vision by signing with Arista Records in 1980 under the guidance of Clive Davis.
And Clive Davis was renowned for his ability to rejuvenate the careers of established legends. He was determined to bring Aretha back to mainstream visibility by embracing a modern pop sound.
Which required a really delicate strategy, right?
Yeah.
Maintaining the integrity of the Queen of Soul while fitting her into this new, technology-driven decade.
Exactly. And the first step wasn't a record, it was a screen roll. Her profile immediately got a massive cultural boost from her cameo in the 1980 film The Blues Brothers.
That was a stroke of marketing genius.
It really was. She played Mrs. Murphy, the proprietor of a soul food restaurant, belting out "Thinkum" in this fantastic musical sequence.
A performance she later reprised in Blues Brothers 2000.
Right. And it put her in front of a new generation, a movie audience that might not have been buying her 70s albums. It was a vital cultural bridge.
Musically, the momentum was gradual but deliberate. Her 81 album, Love All the Hurt Away.
It featured a successful R&B duet with George Benson and crucially earned her a Grammy, ending a 6-year drought. That win signaled to the industry, she's back.
And Davis's strategy accelerated in 1982 when he hired Luther Vandross to produce the album Jump to It.
And Vandross was a rising star in R&B production. He provided a more contemporary yet still soulful sheen to her sound.
The results were immediate and measurable. Jump to Up, it was her first album since the Sparkle soundtrack 7 years earlier to go gold.
Right. It confirmed that modern R&B production could successfully house her iconic voice.
And that was just the prelude to the big, necessary, and maybe controversial transformation.
The 1985 album Who's Zoomin' Who? It was a radical departure. Arista hired producer Narada Michael Walden, and he steered her fully into the crossover pop sound of the mid-'80s.
Which meant consciously moving away from the pure organic R&B of Atlantic.
Oh, yeah. The album utilized synthesized dance rock, urban pop elements. It was heavy on keyboards, drum machines, and that classic mid-'80s sheen.
A huge risk.
But it paid off spectacularly. The sources note it became her first certified platinum album, and it peaked at number 13 on the Billboard 200.
Her highest album peak in nearly 20 years.
Clive Davis had done it. He'd succeeded in making the Queen of Soul a contemporary pop force again.
And the success was fueled by a new platform, MTV. That exposure was critical.
Absolutely. Aretha, who had kind of missed the initial video revolution, was suddenly reaching this massive global young audience through music television.
The album yielded major hits. Most famously, Freeway of Love and the title track. And it also produced that politically charged yet entirely pop duet.
Sisters are doing it for themselves with the new wave duo Eurythmics.
It cemented her place as a figure who could collaborate across genres and generations without losing her identity.
And the global pinnacle of this era came with her 1986 album Aretha, featuring the duet with George Michael. I Knew You Were Waiting for Me.
A massive worldwide success.
A global #1, top charts in the US, the UK, Australia. For Aretha, it was monumental. Her first single in almost 2 decades to top the Billboard Hot 100, and it won her another Grammy.
The collaboration was perfect. George Michael's modern pop sensibility paired with the sheer power and history of Aretha's voice.
Amidst all this pop glory, though, she did take a brief, meaningful pause to honor her roots.
She did. In 1987, she released her second full-length gospel album, One Lord, One Faith, One Baptism.
Recorded live at her late father's church, New Bethel, it was a strategic reminder that no matter how many synthesizers she used on Arista, her spiritual core was still intact.
But the sources indicate that after the late 1980s, consistent mainstream success started to prove elusive again.
Yeah, Rolling Stone noted that after 1988, Franklin never again had huge hits.
The problem was the changing sound of R&B. She attempted to adapt to the new dominant genre of the late 80s and early 90s.
A new jack swing sound.
Okay, so for listeners who might not be steeped in music history, what exactly was New Jack Swing and why did it present such a challenge for her?
Well, New Jack Swing was essentially the fusion of R&B vocals with hip-hop beats. It incorporated synthesized drums, swing rhythms, and often this aggressive, angular instrumentation.
So think artists like Teddy Riley and Babyface's early work with groups like Guy or Bobby Brown.
Exactly. The sound was very youth-driven and highly produced.
And when Aretha attempted to enter that space with albums like Through the Storm and What You See Is What You Sweat.
The attempts were commercially unsuccessful. It was a hard fit. Her voice, which was built for expansive soul, natural acoustic arrangements, and rhythmic improvisation, often sounded compressed and kind of out of sync when forced into the rigid, synthesized structure of New Jack Swing.
The albums bombed because the sound just lacked the necessary authenticity.
Exactly. The authenticity that had defined all of her previous successes.
Despite the album struggle, she still found niche success, which really proved her versatility.
She did. She showed she could adapt to the club scene, topping the Billboard Dance Club Play chart in '93 with the house song A Deeper Love.
And she managed a final top 40 R&B hit working with Babyface on the smooth ballad Willing to Forgive in 1994.
Her 1998 album A Rose Is Still a Rose was her final gold-certified album and final top 40 single, proving she could still land when the production was right.
But the moment from this late Arista period that transcended music and became pure legend happened at the 1998 Grammys. It's the story of performance under impossible pressure.
The Pavarotti story. Luciano Pavarotti, the world-famous opera tenor, was scheduled to perform the legendary aria Nessun Dorma.
And he became too ill to sing at the last minute.
The show producers were in an utter panic. The show was live. Millions were watching.
They needed a miracle, and they turned to Aretha. She'd performed the aria 2 nights earlier at a different event, sort of as a private curiosity. They asked her if she could possibly step in.
And here's where we have to discuss the technical difficulty. Aretha was a powerful mezzo-soprano, a lower female vocal range. Pavarotti sang in the tenor range, a much higher male range.
The orchestra had been tuned and arranged specifically for a tenor.
For her to agree to sing that complex, demanding aria in the tenor key in front of the world with basically 2 hours' notice, it's arguably one of the most audacious acts of musical genius in live broadcasting history.
She asked to hear Pavarotti's rehearsal tape once, walked onto the stage, and delivered a performance that was met with an immediate, fervent standing ovation.
It proved, definitively, that her technical mastery was unbound by genre. The performance was seen by over 1 billion people worldwide. It was just pure, unadulterated excellence and showmanship.
She performed the aria again, years later, for Pope Francis in 2015.
It was a signature moment of the Queen of Soul claiming mastery over even the most sacred Western European art form.
She ultimately departed from Arista after 2 decades, releasing her final album with them, So Damn Happy, in 2003, which featured the Grammy-winning song Wonderful.
A fitting, if quiet, conclusion to an era defined by strategic reinvention and global crossover.
The final decade and a half of her life, following her departure from Arista, saw Aretha transition into a role that very few artists ever achieve.
The role of a living national monument.
Exactly. Her public performances were treated as significant historical events.
And this was really cemented by her appearances on the political and national stage. Her performances were often these moments of collective national reflection.
She performed the Star-Spangled Banner at Super Bowl XL in her hometown of Detroit in 2006.
But the performance that captivated the world, maybe even outside of the music itself, was at President Barack Obama's 2009 inaugural ceremony.
She performed My Country, 'Tis of Thee. And the sources highlight the cultural moment created by her enormous, custom-designed hat.
The hat. A gray felt piece with this massive bow. It became a viral online topic, almost overshadowing the gravity of the inauguration itself. It was the perfect blend of high culture, personal style, and American tradition.
It was a statement. The Queen of Soul was dressed for the occasion, representing not just herself, but the rich tradition of the Black church and the dignity of the office.
She returned to Ford Field in 2016 for another rendition of the national anthem, seated behind the piano in a fur coat, giving this remarkable 4-minute, largely improvised version that just emphasized her complete mastery over the melody.
In 2014, she briefly returned to working with Clive Davis at RCA Records, and that partnership immediately led to a remarkable chart milestone.
Yeah, her 2014 album, Aretha Franklin Sings the Great Diva Classics, included her now famous cover of Adele's Rolling in the Deep.
And when that track debuted on the Hot R&B Hip-Hop Songs chart,
Aretha became the first woman to have a 100 songs chart on that listing.
100 songs. Just think about that sustained run.
Yeah.
5 decades of charting power. It's an achievement that speaks volumes about her enduring connection to the core of American rhythm and blues.
But if there's one performance from her final years that encapsulated her entire legacy, her power, her pain, her gospel foundation, and her sheer star quality, it has to be the 2015 Kennedy Center Honors.
This was the performance that moved a sitting president to tears.
Exactly. The honors were celebrating Carole King, who co-wrote You Make Me Feel Like a Natural Woman, which Aretha had turned into a career-defining hit decades earlier.
Aretha walked onto the stage, sat at the piano, and proceeded to deliver a performance that was just universally acclaimed.
And the moment everyone remembers, the flashpoint of the entire evening, happened during the swelling bridge of the song.
She dramatically dropped her fur coat from her shoulders to the stage.
And the symbolism here is so deep it demands a full unpacking. David Remnick, writing in The New Yorker, captured the essence of it, referencing what the sources describe as a powerful gospel tradition.
Tell us more about that tradition. Why was the dropping of the coat so much more than just a theatrical flourish?
It goes back to the tradition of homegoing services in the gospel community, especially funerals for prominent figures. It was known that sometimes, when a gospel queen died, a contemporary would toss their expensive fur coat onto the coffin.
Wow.
And this gesture was profoundly complex. It honored the dead, offering a lavish tribute, but it simultaneously served as this defiant, triumphant, and almost theatrical declaration, castigating death itself. It's a refusal to let mortality have the final word.
So performing Carole King's song in front of the co-writer, in front of the president, and dropping that coat, it wasn't just showing off.
No. It was summoning the entire spiritual weight of her history, connecting the sacred power she learned as a child to the spectacular power she wielded as the queen.
It was transcendent.
The raw emotion, the piano runs, the vocal precision, and then that symbolic casting off of the mantle of sorrow. President Obama was visibly moved to tears because that moment articulated a lifetime of pain. Her early life trauma, her struggles, her losses, transformed into glorious, vital hope.
Franklin herself later recalled it as one of the best nights of her life.
And following that pinnacle, her public performances became increasingly rare.
She continued to record, releasing a brand new Me in 2017 with archived recordings and the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra.
Her final full concert was at the Ravinia Festival on September 3, 2017, and her final public performance was at an Elton John AIDS Foundation gala in New York in November of that year.
We should also acknowledge the personal context that ran alongside these triumphs, particularly the immense care she undertook for her father.
That's a defining aspect of her life in the 1980s. She moved back to Detroit in 1982 to assist with the care of C.L. Franklin,
Who had been shot in 1979 during a home invasion and remained in a coma.
She cared for him devotedly until his death in 1984. That personal dedication highlights a fierce loyalty to her family that often ran parallel to her public career.
And regarding her own health, a major factor that limited her global stardom later in life was her fear of flying.
Yes. Following an incident in 1984, she developed a crippling, lifelong fear of flying that prevented her from touring overseas for the rest of her career.
Which meant her international appearances were severely limited, a huge constraint on an artist of her stature.
She also navigated significant personal relationships, mother of 4 sons, Clarence, Edward, Ted White Jr., and Kekef Cunningham.
And her first marriage to Ted White, which was concurrent with the explosive Atlantic years, was famously contentious and marred by domestic abuse. It ended in divorce in '69.
Her second marriage, to actor Glynn Turman, lasted from 1978 to 1984. And these tumultuous personal chapters certainly informed the depth of feeling she channeled into songs like Chain of Fools and I Never Loved a Man.
She also battled serious health issues for decades. A former chain smoker who struggled with alcoholism, she quit smoking in 1992.
In 2010, she underwent surgery for an undisclosed tumor, and while she denied reports of pancreatic cancer at the time, she passed away on August 16, 2018, at age 76.
Her cause of death was confirmed as a malignant pancreatic neuroendocrine tumor, or PNET, a less common, though still aggressive form of pancreatic cancer.
Her passing triggered an outpouring of grief and tribute. Thousands paid respects during a public lying in repose in Detroit.
Her homegoing service was monumental, with performances by Stevie Wonder and Jennifer Hudson and appearances by former President Bill Clinton.
But the funeral was not without a final characteristic moment of controversy. At Aretha's request, Reverend Jasper Williams Jr., who had eulogized her father, delivered the farewell.
But his eulogy was criticized by the family. Her nephew Vaughn complained that Williams spoke for 50 minutes and at no time did he properly eulogize her.
Instead, the speech veered into what was widely perceived as a political address.
So even in her final moment of public ceremony, the sacred and the political, the personal and the public, were colliding in a way that defined her entire life.
The enduring legacy of Aretha Franklin goes beyond the hits, beyond the charts, and beyond the titles. It rests fundamentally on her technical prowess and her ability to weave together the fabric of American musical history.
She is rightly described as the quintessential soul artist.
Richie Unterberger noted that she was one of the giants of soul music, and indeed of American pop as a whole, epitomizing soul at its most gospel-charged core.
But let's dig into the technical side of that genius. What specifically made her voice so untouchable?
First, the sheer instrument. A powerful mezzo-soprano voice, but with unparalleled flexibility. She was a master of gospel vocal runs and melisma, that stretching of a single syllable over multiple notes that she deployed with precision and emotional timing.
But what truly set her apart was her rhythmic intelligence.
Yes, that concept, rhythmic intelligence, is crucial to understanding her genius.
It is. David Remnick pointed out that what distinguished her was her way of singing behind the beat, of spraying a wash of notes over a single word or syllable.
Most singers strive to hit the beat exactly. Aretha would sometimes deliberately lag, pull back, or push ahead of the established rhythm. And this created an incredible tension and release, injecting a palpable sense of improvisation and urgency into every track, particularly on her Atlantic recordings.
And we have to loop back to her piano playing. It wasn't just accompaniment, it was the foundation of her arrangements.
Exactly. The critic Randy Lewis called her piano playing magic and inspirational. She didn't rely on outside arrangers to dictate her feeling for a song. She used the keyboard to anchor her powerful voice, allowing her to spontaneously shift the dynamics and structure in real time.
That combination of instrumental command and vocal genius gave her the confidence and authority to transform something like Otis Redding's Respect into an entirely new creation.
This synthesis of sound was so eloquently captured by President Barack Obama, who stated that she embodies more fully the connection between the African-American spiritual, the blues, R&B, rock and roll, the way that hardship and sorrow were transformed into something full of beauty and vitality and hope.
And that transformation of hardship into hope is the core of her activist legacy.
Absolutely. Beyond the music, her impact on the civil rights and women's rights movements was enormous. She grew up steeped in activism. And she didn't just sing the songs, she provided crucial, tangible support.
The sources confirm she provided financial aid for civil rights groups, covering payroll when funds were low, performing at countless benefits and protests. She weaponized her fame and her income for the movement.
And she took bold, public political stands. Famously, in 1970, she publicly offered to pay the bail for political activist and philosopher Angela Davis, who was jailed at the time on questionable charges.
And her quote from that time is fantastic. She said she would help see Davis go free, saying, "I've been locked up, and I know you got to disturb the peace when you can't get no peace."
That quote, equating personal struggle with the need for political confrontation, is quintessential Aretha.
And her actions were consistent right up until the end. Her decision not to participate in President Donald Trump's 2017 inauguration was viewed by many as a powerful mass act of musical protest,
aligning her with a lifetime of political statements made through her art and her choices. The sources also highlight her quiet but strong support of Native American rights worldwide.
The list of formal honors she received is just immense, covering every facet of American culture. She broke ground by becoming the first female artist inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1987.
She was also inducted into the Gospel Music Hall of Fame and the National Women's Hall of Fame.
She received the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2005, the Kennedy Center Honors in 1994, and numerous Grammy honors, including the Living Legend and Lifetime Achievement Awards.
But perhaps the ultimate, most academic recognition came posthumously in 2019. The Pulitzer Prize jury awarded her a special citation for her indelible contribution to American music and culture for more than 5 decades.
That Pulitzer is monumental. It signifies the mainstream American establishment, recognizing that popular music specifically, African-American spiritual, soul, and R&B traditions, holds the same artistic and cultural weight as classical or jazz compositions.
And she was the first individual woman to receive such a citation, confirming that her work transcended mere entertainment and should be considered foundational American art.
And the tributes continued beyond the formal institutions. Her voice was declared a Michigan natural resource in 1985.
In 2017, a portion of Madison Street in Detroit was renamed Aretha Franklin Way.
Even New York City subway stations that shared her name paid tribute after her death with respect stickers added next to the Franklin name signs at Franklin Street and Franklin Avenue.
And in a nod to her truly global and lasting impact, asteroid 249516 was named Aretha in her honor in 2014.
She truly left an indelible mark on American culture, transcending genre, politics, and generations. Clive Davis said she understood the essence of both language and melody and was able to take it to a place very few, if any, could.
The sources universally crown her a musical genius unmatched in her range, power, and soul.
So we've traced the arc of a revolutionary career, from the profound spiritual foundation forged in C.L. Franklin's famous Detroit church, through the immense personal burdens of early motherhood and loss,
to the strategic struggles at Columbia. We saw the explosive creative partnership with Jerry Wexler at Atlantic and her necessary reinvention for the MTV generation under Clive Davis.
Her voice was never just an instrument. It was a vessel that carried the weight of American history, transforming deep hardship and sorrow into beauty, vitality, and hope. She served simultaneously as a feminist rallying cry, a civil rights leader, and a musical genius who never lost her rhythmic intelligence or that spontaneous gospel fire across 5 decades.
So when you reflect on the sheer force of the Queen of Soul, you should always remember the profound symbolism embedded in her actions, especially that final, glorious public declaration at the Kennedy Center Honors in 2015.
The moment she dramatically dropped that fur coat was so much more than just showmanship. It was a defiant, deeply felt gesture that simultaneously honored a contemporary artist like Carole King,
while echoing the sacred, defiant gospel tradition of casting off mortal sorrow and pain.
And this duality, the sacred power forged in the church, combined with the spectacular, unparalleled performance skill of a global icon. That is the singular, defining essence of Aretha Franklin.
Something for you to mull over the next time you hear that phenomenal voice demanding and earning its RESPECT.